All right, Tulsi, RFK Jr., and Kash Patel face the Senate slaughterhouse this week. Starting off, so they have their Senate committee hearings this week. So this is not the full Senate vote. This is just the first round. What they have to do is they first have to face a small panel, a committee. They're each facing different committees this week. Those committees then have to vote whether or not to advance them to the full Senate. And then the full Senate will vote, and that is when hopefully we'll see some confirmations happening. So Tulsi Gabbard she's been nominated for the Director of National Intelligence. Her hearing will take place Thursday morning. She sits before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Kash Patel, who is nominated to be FBI Director, he will appear in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Also, his is on Thursday. But before them, RFK Jr. tomorrow is set to start his confirmation hearings. He will first face the Senate Committee on Finance, which is ultimately going to be the committee that votes whether or not to advance him. But not only does he have to sit in front of the Senate Committee on Finance, he also has to go and do a courtesy hearing. They're not going to be voting, but they're going to be asking questions and grilling him in front of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, also known as HELP, the HELP Committee. And then it will go back to the Finance Committee or the Senate Committee on Finance, if you want to be fancy and technical about the names. And they will decide on whether or not Kennedy is going to get through. Of these three names, Tulsi Gabbard is the most controversial and has the least likely chance of getting through, which to me is bonkers. I actually think Tulsi, out of all three of them, would be the least controversial and has the most credentials to serve in the position that she's being nominated for. But, we're just surrounded by a bunch of media idiots. And also, the politicians are fed a bunch of bull crap. The media's fed a bunch of bull crap. We're going to get into it. But first, let's kind of break down RFK Jr. and then we'll get to the issues that Tulsi's facing and some that Kash Patel are facing. So when it comes to RFK Jr., right now, it's looking like there are three senators that may not be voting for him on the Republican side. So he needs all of that. He needs at least one of them if he's going to lose every single Democrat. And, if they just say no to Kennedy, we don't want this anti-vaxxer. We don't want a Kennedy. We're Democrats and we hate Kennedys. At least we hate this Kennedy. Oh, boy. Haven't things changed? But it looks like Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, Susan Collins from Maine, Mitch McConnell from Kentucky are the three potential block votes for RFK Jr. He is, and there's right there, that's Lisa Murkowski. We got Susan Collins and also Mitch McConnell, who are Mitch. I mean, what does Mitch even know? Why is he still there? Why hasn't he? That guy is way further gone than Joe Biden. I don't know why he's still around. It's elder abuse. They're just propping this guy up to do votes, and he's got people behind him, and they're the ones who are really pulling the strings. I don't know why this guy is still there. But anyway, let me just read this was a really good article that was done by KFF Health News, and they actually interviewed some people. But what they're claiming the issue is going to be with RFK Jr. is they're saying that there are quite a few people who are really nervous about, you obviously figure out that people are nervous, but what they say is for decades, Kennedy has advocated for, these are going to be the pushbacks against Kennedy and the things he's going to have to deal with. He's advocated for health-related ideas that are scientifically disproven or controversial. He created and was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by Children's Health Defense, a group that champions the false idea that vaccines cause autism and other chronic diseases, and has sued to take vaccines off the market. Kennedy has said COVID vaccines are the deadliest in history. See, look at they're acting like this is what bull crap. Those COVID vaccines, they worked so well, didn't they? How many jabs are you on? You still got COVID 10 times. Antidepressants lead children to commit mass shootings. So they're saying, how dare he say that? You don't think that giving a kid psychosomatic drugs to a developing brain isn't going to cause a problem for that developing brain? Are you nuts? Of course, there is a serious issue. If you give any kid any sort of drug while they're developing, you have to face the consequence that you may be harming them and you may be causing irreversible damage, or you may be stunting their growth or development in some way, shape, or form. But no, I mean, these are the same people that want to gender transition your kid, that are telling your little boy he's actually a little girl and that they can change his penis, cut it off and all, I mean, these are the same types of people. I mean, this is just insanity. Environmental containments may cause people to become trans. How dare we think that maybe mercury poisoning is actually harming our brains, or fluoride poisoning is actually making us stupider? How could you ever believe that putting all of these chemicals into your body are going to actually cause problems? You are such a conspiracy theorist. Are people ever going to, I think that there's going to be a time in the future, people are going to look back at this time period, and they're going to say, wow, they were really insane. It was like the persecution of Galileo for believing the earth spun around the sun, something like that. It's going to be like, now, duh, science. And we're just going to, it's just a bunch of heretics, or not. I guess they're not heretics. What would you call it? Fanatics, like the fanatics, right? We're the heretics for not believing in their fanaticism. HIV is not the only cause of AIDS. These are some of the things that they're saying RFK Jr. said. He also pushes the use of products that regulators consider dangerous, such as raw milk, and for broader use of some medicines, such as ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, to treat conditions without FDA approval. He says public health agencies oppose their use only because of regulatory capture by big drug and food interests. I don't think he's wrong. Maybe on some of these, who knows, right? It's about questioning the science, because that is what science is. Science is questioning. So if he's questioning it and he's saying, how do you know for sure that these contaminants that we're putting in our food and in our children's brains, how do you know those aren't causing developmental issues like autism that we're seeing at skyrocketing rates? Or how many kids today claim that they're schizophrenic? Or how many kids today claim they're born in the wrong gender, in the wrong sex body? These are not normal. And I'm not 100% convinced it's just societal brainwashing. I'm not convinced of that. I actually think that there could be other factors there that are chemical. We drug up our kids. We have a drugged up, hyper medicated, and we've also got, who knows, and they say, oh, you're such a conspiracy theorist if you think like microwaves or 5Gs are going to do something to you. Well, maybe they do. Have you researched it? You don't know. You're just automatically saying no, because the industries that are making a fortune in those want to tell you that's conspiracy theory. And they've been able to get away with undermining actual independent thought and critical thinking by just labeling anything they don't like as a conspiracy theory. That's how they've been able to get away with it. So it goes on to say, this is Paul Offit, the director of Vaccine Education Center at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. He was one of the main pushers of the COVID vaccine. He says he believes you can avoid disease if you have a healthy immune system. Well, yeah, this is a doctor, and the doctor saying he believes you can avoid disease if you have a healthy immune system. Yeah, actually, that's the way it works. We know that there are vulnerable populations. Why are they vulnerable? Why are they more susceptible to disease? You tell me. Oh, because they have a weakened immune system. Okay. Oh my gosh. He sees vaccines and antibiotics as toxins. This is what he's saying. Yes, well, they are toxins. Maybe they're helpful toxins at times, but they're still toxins to your body. Marty McCary for FDA Commissioner, Jay Bhattacharya for National Institute of Health, and U.S. Rep. Dave Weldon for Centers Disease Control and Prevention Director are generally disdainful of the agencies they'll be leading, Offit said. Good. We need skeptics in there. They think they're going to go into office, pull back the curtain, find all this bad stuff, and reveal it to the American public, he said. Well, maybe they will. And that's what you're so afraid of, right? It goes on to say that during the measles epidemic in 2019 and 2020 that killed 83 people, mostly children in Samoa, Kennedy, as chairman of Children's Health Events, warned the country's prime minister against measles vaccination. This behavior alone is disqualifying for an HHS nominee, says Georges Benjamin, executive director of the American Public Health Association. We don't really know. The thing is that vaccines, that the eradication of measles has also correlated not just with vaccination, but it was already going down before the vaccine campaign started, but it also correlated with better sanitation. And you're talking about Samoa, where maybe the sanitation isn't as great, the drinking water, there's a lot of factors there, and they just want to automatically say, no, it was the vaccine, and you're not even looking at what the other possibilities are that maybe helped eradicate disease. Sewage systems and sanitation, I think, are the biggest, throughout history, have done the most towards eradicating disease than anything else. Equally problematic in Benjamin's view was Kennedy's legal effort in 2021 to get the COVID vaccine pulled from the market. He can't say he's not anti-vax, Benjamin said. He wasn't following the evidence. Oh my God, here we go. So this Benjamin guy, he wanted to get the COVID vaccine pulled off the market. That is just not following the evidence. What was the evidence? What was the evidence? Did it show that it stopped the spread? Because that's what everybody was asserting and laughed in my face when I said it didn't stop the spread. I got laughed at in the face. Now, if I say it doesn't stop the spread, I went, yeah, okay. Yeah, we know. I know. Okay. Yeah, it didn't stop the spread. People got the vaccine. They still died. They got the vaccine 5 times. They still died. They still got sick. I mean, you know, why are people still holding on to this? It didn't work. I mean, just give it up. It didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. Goes on to say, Trump has demanded that Republican senators line up behind his nominees, and he so far has succeeded. It's thought that Senators Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine could oppose Kennedy based on their opposition to Hegseth. Senator Mitch McConnell, the other Hegseth nay vote, is a polio survivor who has not spoken publicly about Kennedy because he can't speak publicly anymore, I don't think. But he did say in December that opposing proving cures was dangerous. Other senators who Kennedy vote said to be in question include Senator Bill Cassidy, the Help Committee chair, a physician who gave a lukewarm response after meeting Kennedy. But here's the thing. So there might be these 3 senators, you know, there might be 3 or 4 Republicans that are like, man, I don't know about him, but he might actually gain some Democrat votes. And it might not just be party lines. All Democrats oppose him. Senator Cory Booker, who shares Kennedy's concern with the spread of obesity and chronic illness. Sheldon Whitehouse, who attended law school with Kennedy, might vote for him. Neither senator's office responded to a request for comment. But there is these possibilities. Now, Kennedy's main opposition on the Republican side, so he's got main oppositions on both the Republican and on the Democrat side. On the Democrat side, it's mostly going to be about vaccines. It's the Paul Offits of the world, their way of thinking, and they're going to be grilling Kennedy saying, you're anti-vax, you think that vaccines cause autism, you think that vaccines cause issues, you know, what do you think about transitioning kids? You should let that happen, right? You know, they're going to be grilling him on all of these, on all of their fanatical ideology that is not rooted in science. And they're going to grill him on that. And maybe some will drop it and say, well, you know, because you'd hope at this point that some of the senators are like, well, I took the vaccine and, you know, it didn't stop the spread and it didn't stop me from getting COVID. And I still got really sick. And I even had a family member die and they were vaccinated. So you might have, you know, the few Democratic senators that are like, yeah, you know what, maybe we should question this. And I know people who are vaccine injured. And, you know, out of the 50 Democrat senators or 40, you know, nearly 50 of them, however many there are, 47 or something, you know that they surely some of them know people who are vaccine injured, surely. So there's a real possibility that some of them might give that up and they might just say, you know, he's going to be good for health and for getting, you know, getting a hold of obesity, chronic illness and additives in the food and things that we shouldn't have in the system. So there's a possibility he gains some Democrats and that might get him through. On the conservative side, the biggest issue they're going to have with Kennedy is abortion. Kennedy, remember, ran as a Democrat, comes from a prominent Democrat family, and he has Democrat viewpoints. But he has recently then became independent when the Democrats changed and Democrats became pro-big pharma, pro-pump yourself full of a bunch of medicine and really anti-science. And so he became independent during the campaign. And even when he was a Democrat, trying to run as a Democrat, he was trying to go back into the Democratic Party and change it back to the way he thought it should be. But, you know, I knew that was a lost cause. And it was. So he's not a real Republican, and he never claimed to be a Republican. He joined forces with Trump in order to get this position. And Trump promised him this nomination. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. got this nomination. And really, the Senate needs to push him through because a lot of people who voted and are on board with MAGA and have gone towards Republicans are banking on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. getting through. And we will be pissed, myself included, if he is not confirmed by the Senate. If they try to block him in any way, this is going to be infuriating. And the reason it's infuriating, not only because I think he's going to make some real meaningful change as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. I'm really excited to see what it is he does. And I'm excited to see him questioning science the way science should be questioned, because that is what science is. I'm excited for that. But also, it would just be a giant slap in the face of the voters. The voters supported Kennedy. The Kennedy voters helped Trump get across the finish line and gave those Republicans sitting in the Senate what they wanted, which was a Republican president. So they've got to also, it's not just Trump that has to appease the voting base. It's every Republican who's sitting in their seat who needs to understand that the power they're given by having all three chambers, by having the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, that a lot of that has to do with Kennedy and the Kennedy voters, the Kennedy teams that came out and suddenly started supporting Trump because they liked Kennedy. So it would be a giant slap in the face. They've got to let Kennedy through, and they've just got to drop it. The abortion issue is a big one for a lot of these conservatives. They don't like that Kennedy is more pro-choice. Kennedy has taken the stance of, look, I'm just going to leave it to the states. I'll defer to the states. I think that's the right stance to take. To say, look, it doesn't matter what I think if I'm pro-choice or pro-life. It's up to the states. If I believe it's up to the states, that's a Republican principle. The problem is that a lot of these Republicans want to go further than that. And they don't want it just to be left up to the states. They want to just abolish it altogether. They actually want to do what they claim Democrats did so wrongly by allowing it all together. They then unwound that and said, well, this is because it was a bad ruling. Roe v. Wade was a bad ruling. It was unconstitutional. And so now we're going to wind it back. It should go back to the states. But they were lying. They didn't really want it to go back to the states. They wanted to go back to them. They just wanted to go the other way. Republican Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, who's anti-abortion rights, told CNN that Kennedy needs to do more to assuage her concerns given his past comments. She said, he will need to publicly state his position on abortion because I'm obviously very life-focused. That's one of my biggest concerns. And let's see, Murkowski said she's also on the issue with him with vaccines. She's kind of like, well, he doesn't, he's a vaccine skeptic. She says, but then there's also climate, his view on climate and his ideology. I want to make sure that's not playing a role there either. I don't know how climate, maybe, but with Health and Human Services, I don't know. So she's going to ask him about that. Texas Senator John Cornyn says, my position is that the president is entitled to his team absent some extraordinary circumstances, but I'm just one vote. And as we've seen with the Hegseth nomination, there's not a lot of cushion. And so I think the hearing will be very important to either satisfy people that he shouldn't, that he should be confirmed or not. So I think, I agree with John Cornyn there. I think that a president is entitled to their team. So as long as the person isn't horrendously disqualified for some really, out of bounds reasons. I mean, it's got to be something serious. It can't just be you don't like the guy. Like Pete Hegseth, it was such a close vote. And that was, to me, bullshit. It shouldn't have never been that close. You might not like him. You might not think that he's the right guy for the job. He's not your pick. But look, you didn't run for president and win. In fact, some of you senators ran for president and didn't win. So the guy that won, he won because people liked him. They liked who he was going to select. And you've got to give him his team. And if the only reason to disqualify some member of his team is because it's, you could disqualify some member of the team simply because something was about them that was genuinely disqualifying. A conflict of interest that was severely disqualifying. Something in their past that comes up, like if you find out that they've got a criminal record or, something along those lines, or they don't pass the background check, or, there's something, it's got to be something like that. It can't just be you don't like him and he's not your pick. That's just bullshit. You didn't win the presidency. Trump did. What's interesting, though, is how Democrats are going to, the ones to watch are really going to be Democrats. I mean, Republicans, I think most of them are going to toe the line. I think most of them are going to vote for him. You might end up with the Murkowski and the Collins, and they're always kind of the naysayers. But the rest of them, I think, will probably go along. But it's going to be interesting to see if he can grab some Democrats. And he should be able to get some. If you remember, he was a Democrat. Democrats liked him. This is actually Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the big anti-science guy who's making up a bunch of bullshit. Here he was actually asked to testify to Congress back in 2008 about mercury poisoning. And he was invited by Democrat Senator Ed Markey, who now is not backing Kennedy and thinks he's a big wacko. But back then, he thought he was just fine. Watch this.
About 8 years ago, the EPA announced that in 19 states, it is now unsafe to eat any freshwater fish caught in the state because of mercury contamination. The mercury is coming from those coal-burning power plants. In 49 states, at least some of the fish are unsafe to eat. In fact, the only state where all of the fish are safe to eat is Dick Cheney's home state of Wyoming, where the Republican-controlled legislature has refused to appropriate the money to test the fish. We know a lot about mercury now. According to CDC, there's 1 out of every 6 American women now has so much mercury in her womb that her children are at risk for a grim inventory of diseases: autism, blindness, mental retardation, heart, liver, and kidney disease. I have so much mercury in my body just from eating fish, 2.5 times what EPA is considered safe. I was told by Dr. David Carpenter, who's the principal authority on mercury toxicity in this country, that if a woman with my levels of mercury in her blood would have children with cognitive impairment, with permanent brain neurological injury. Today, according to CDC, there's 640,000 children born in this country every year who've been exposed to dangerous levels of mercury in their mother's wombs. The Clinton administration, recognizing the gravity of this national health epidemic, reclassified mercury as a hazardous pollutant under the Clean Air Act. That triggered a requirement that all of those plants remove 90% of the mercury within 3.5 years. It would have cost them less than 1% of plant revenues, and we know that it works. When they stop emitting the mercury, it disappears within 5 years mostly from the fish and waterways downwind of those plants. But this is an industry that donated $156 million to President Bush and his party since the 2000 election cycle. And their reward was leaders like Mr. Homestead here, who came in and eviscerated that rule and instead replaced a rule that was written by utility industry lobbyists, his own law firm, Latham and Watkins, which ended essentially the regulation, that tight regulation of mercury, and allows these utilities to continue to discharge mercury at huge rates for endless periods.
It's amazing. I mean, do you think that he sounds crazy there? That sounds reasonable. It sounds like he's highly educated on the topic. And of course, Democrats were listening to him and they were like, wow, okay, yeah, maybe we should be doing something about this. And now they're like, oh, the guy's a loon. He's actually talking about all of these additives and things in our vaccines and food, and he's crazy. And they're just all bought off by Big Pharma. I mean, they liked him back when they weren't. Now that they don't like the guy, and it's pretty apparent. So we'll see if he gets through. We'll be following it, but he does start the hearings tomorrow. Then on Thursday, he goes on to the Health Committee and does a courtesy hearing there. And then I suspect on Friday is, when we'll get that vote from the Senate committee. Meanwhile, Kash Patel is also facing a committee on Thursday. Kash Patel is nominated for the FBI director. He will be appearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee for his confirmation hearing on Thursday. Now, a lot of people do not like Kash Patel. They don't think that he's qualified at all for the job. A little bit about his background. Kash Patel is an attorney. He has been on this show before. We've had him on maybe once or twice, and he's a big Trump supporter. He was in the Trump administration in a variety of different jobs. During the Trump administration, he was the senior director of counterterrorism at the NSC, the National Security Council. He was also the informal Ukraine policy specialist and principal deputy with director of national intelligence. And he was the chief of staff to Secretary of Defense. So he had a variety of roles inside of the Trump administration. He also, in his private life, was a public defender and a trial attorney with the Justice Department. And then he was also a senior aide to House Intelligence Committee Chair Devin Nunes. But people are saying he doesn't have any, he's dangerous, he's crazy. Paul Rosenvig, former Department of Homeland Security and National Security expert, says Kash Patel is manifestly unqualified, saying given his intemperate support for retribution against the deep state and Trump's political foes, he's temperamentally unqualified for the job. John Bolton says Kash Patel's conduct in Mr. Trump's first term and thereafter indicates that as FBI director, he would operate according to secret police chief Lavrenti Beria's reported comment to Joseph Stalin, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. Okay. Who listens to John Bolton? Mark Esper says, former Trump defense, he said that Patel once nearly bungled an overseas hostage rescue by apparently lying to colleagues about whether the foreign country's government had approved the operation, and that as a result, Patel put American lives at serious risk. Gina Haspel, former CIA director for Trump, said that Mr. Patel, she apparently she went to great lengths to prevent him from being installed in senior intelligence and law enforcement roles, and was threatened to resign over the prospect of Patel becoming her deputy. So a lot of these guys, you've got like Bill Barr, Andrew McCabe. I mean, just like the slew, the clown car of the anti-Trump crowd that absolutely hates Kash Patel, thinking he'd be a terrible FBI director. The whole point would be to get the FBI back on track to, not target American citizens who are just conservatives or liberal, whatever. The FBI is just targeting Americans, just trying to label anybody a terrorist so that they could justify their jobs. And what we really need is somebody to go in there and say, you got to be doing your actual job, which is going after predators and rapists and murderers and drug trafficking, all of these various different things, and not going after Americans for having certain opinions or political viewpoints. But they don't like Kash Patel. So we'll see if Kash Patel gets pushed through or not. He's very controversial. People just don't really seem to like the guy. The most controversial on Trump's list is, in my opinion, somebody who should be the least controversial out of this bunch, if not out of everybody, and that is Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is the nominee for the Director of National Intelligence. Essentially, she's going to be over the budgets of all of the intelligence agencies and in charge of giving Trump the daily rundown, the daily intelligence brief, which is given to her from other intelligence agencies. So there's a lot of opposition to her. People calling her a Russian asset, thinking that she's somehow, a Manchurian candidate type person, or, just a bunch of crazy stuff. Tulsi Gabbard has served in the military for over 20 years. She did at least 2 tours in combat. I think she might have done more than that. She currently holds the rank, of lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. She's passed 5 background checks. She has security clearances at the highest level. She also was a member of Congress. And unlike others in Congress, she never wore, a foreign military uniform to Congress. She never did that. And they're sitting there accusing her of being the disloyal person when she has served this country faithfully. She has been a member of the military, served in combat, has security clearance. This is insane to think that somebody who is a former congresswoman, active member in the Army Reserve, a lieutenant colonel. This is insane to think that she's not qualified to serve our country. She's not? Well, then why do you have her in the military with the highest security clearance, going to combat twice for the government, for the U.S.? It's insanity out of all of them. Look, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not a doctor. He's an attorney, right? So he has no real health background. He's not a doctor. He's no medical training or anything like that. So I can understand if they say, well, this isn't the right type of person because we want a doctor and we want somebody who has some health background. Although obviously as an attorney and him battling these cases, researching all of these cases, learning all the facts, seeing all the data, that makes him highly qualified. But okay, he's not a doctor. Fine. Kash Patel, he's never in law enforcement. He's also an attorney. Tulsi Gabbard is a freaking soldier and a congresswoman and a patriot of the country. This is insane to me that they would think that she's not qualified for this job. Of course she is. Of course she is. It's just absolutely insane. Even Hillary Clinton tried to claim that she was a Russian asset with absolutely zero evidence of this, slandering her, smearing her, a patriot of this country. It's just insane. Here's Elizabeth Warren talking to Rachel Maddow. I know she's totally your favorite, right? I know I'm second on your list. You love Rachel and then me. I get it. So let me just placate you then with this wonderful clip of Liz Warren and Rachel Maddow basically trying to accuse Tulsi Gabbard also of being, somehow a traitor to the country. Watch this.
Expected Senator Collins and Senator Murkowski on the Republican side to say no. And the question was whether 2 additional Republicans would join with Collins and Murkowski to make this a non-viable nomination. Now, we have had Senator McConnell side with them, which was not something that we knew to count on one way or the other. I wonder, I mean, at best, if he gets through here, it's going to be 50-50 with J.D. Vance as vice president having to break the tie in their favor. I wonder if this vote tonight from Murkowski and Collins and also McConnell makes you feel any differently about some of the even more controversial nominees who are coming up next week. I'm thinking about Kash Patel for the FBI. I'm thinking about Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. I mean, it was just this week, the Washington Post reported for the first time that she not only, when she was in Syria, she not only met with Assad, she met with a Syrian cleric who had threatened to activate a network of suicide bombers inside the United States and Europe. I mean, her history and all of its mysteries is still unfolding in a way that just seems like one more unbelievable controversy upon the next. I wonder if these 3 no votes for Hegseth make you feel any differently than you were previously about some of these more controversial nominees coming up.
You know, I see this as a reminder why it's important to stay in there and fight. If the Democrats had just rolled over with Hegseth and said, we think he's terrible, but not really shown up for the fight, if we had just kind of given him a pass in the hearings, if we had not taken to the floor and continued to beat the drum, continued to talk to the public about it, I think it would have been easy to let this one slip on through, which makes it easy to let the next one slip on through, which makes it easy to let the next one. But what's happened now is, I get it. They're going to drag the vice president in here. He's going to break the tie for only the second time on a cabinet nominee in United States history. We're going to have the VP break the tie. And the Republicans in the Senate are feeling the heat because they recognize that these candidates are disqualified for public office, and they understand that we are taking that case straight to them. So that's the lesson I think we have now. Understand, the fight over Pete Hegseth is not going to be the biggest fight of this entire season.
No, they're going to fight over a lieutenant colonel who served over 20 years and been on tour twice, combat tours twice. I mean, that's who they're going to fight over. When have these two, have they ever served in the U.S. military? What have they done for the country? And they're sitting there criticizing Tulsi Gabbard and acting like she's somehow a foreign asset of Assad or a foreign asset of Russia because she doesn't agree. She has policy disagreements with regime change and trying to bully and topple and putting ourselves in the middle of these wars that we shouldn't be in. I mean, that is Tulsi's beef. And look, I don't agree with Tulsi on everything. Her and I have, we don't even talk really. And, we had a falling out, I guess. I don't know what you want to call it, but I've been very critical of Tulsi Gabbard, but she's not an asset of a foreign government. And, have I criticized her for being a careerist a bit, wanting to climb like anybody? That's a criticism that I could lob at anybody, probably even myself, right? That we all have to look out for our careers and making money or whatever. I just put public servants at a different level, at a different standard on that one. Sure. Could I say I could criticize that she has flip-flopped her positions, in order to go from the Democrats over to the Republicans, and that I don't really know, as somebody who's talked to her many times, I do not know where she stands, what she really believes on certain topics. Yeah, that's a fair, legitimate criticism. I'm not sure if she's saying things because she's wanting the job, wanting to placate certain people, or if she really has those beliefs, or if she's changed and if her beliefs have morphed over time. I mean, that's possible too. I don't know, but those are fair criticisms to lob at somebody, a careerist, but all of the politicians are. So, you can't really lob that one at her. That they're all looking out for themselves. Okay, so what? But a foreign asset, I mean, this is just bonkers. Julia Davis with the Daily Beast tweeted this out. She tweeted out this video saying, meanwhile in Russia, decorated state TV host Vladimir Solovyov wondered with great anticipation when Russia's boy and girl, Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard, will finally get confirmed into their positions. And she links to this video. And this is a Russian state television show, and they're discussing what's going on in the United States and who Trump's appointed for his cabinet. And the translation, it's difficult because they're speaking Russian. So the translation, I don't know if, when they say our girl or our boy, Kash Patel or Tulsi Gabbard, I don't know if they're saying that, the language differences are there. And even if they were saying it like they like that person, so what? We've got people in Australia talking about American politics and who they like and who they don't like. You've got people in the UK. You've got people all over the world, China even, looking at our politicians and deciding who they like and who they don't like. That doesn't mean the politician themselves, just because somebody in China likes you, doesn't make you a Chinese asset or somehow working on their benefit. I mean, it's just total and complete insanity. So Tulsi's the most at risk, and she should be the least at risk when it comes to just sheer qualifications. But she's the most at risk. RFK Jr., I think, is the least at risk. Ultimately, I do think that they will push him through. I think they realize the American people do like him. And I think Republicans will have to get it together and understand that he helped really get Trump over that line and really win that election by a lot, and really helped usher in a whole new era for the Republican Party. So I think they're going to have to get on board with that. Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard, I think, are the ones that may be at risk. But hey, you know what? The Senate doesn't make sense. So here we are trying to make sense of a bunch of nonsense. And ultimately, anything goes, and all three of them might get blocked and might end up not surviving the Senate slaughterhouse this week. Thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show. If you want to watch the full show, visit KimIversonShow.com. The show airs every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, it's at KimIversonShow.com. See you there.